Begin Podfix Network transmission. In 3, 2, 1.
Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean, casting nets, fish nerds. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. It's a podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fish Nerds, a show about fish, fishing, and eating fish. Show that's always interesting, usually funny, and mostly true. I'm Clay Groves, Chief Executive Fish Nerd, licensed fishing guide, your best friend. This week's episode is brought to you by Boat Setter Fishing. Boat Setter is the home for on-the-water experiences, including fishing. You can book your charters for fishing or guides, including the Fish Nerds Guide service. That's my business. Rent boats for going out on your own. All types of boats and charters are available, from bass boats to pontoons and center consoles to offshore sport fishers. Plan your next boating adventure and get 5% off when you book on Boat Setter with code FishNerds. And the cool thing is your boat can make you money when you're not using it, which is the whole concept, and insured by Geico, so that's cool. So let's get into the show. We'll talk more about sponsor stuff later. All right, so tonight we are test driving a new co-host. You might have heard in the last 2 episodes I announced that I need to get more voices on the show, and Mark Carter answered an email. Well, he emailed me, and I replied. He wanted to give it out. So tonight is audition time for Mark Carter. So we're going to want your feedback after the show. Call 607-378-FISH and tell us if you like Mark or not. And if we like him, we'll use him more often. Okay. So Mark Carter is a biologist in training and a podcaster in training. He has a BS and MS in fisheries biology.
Yeah, that's right. But long ago. So I'm a little bit out of practice.
Yeah, because you're super old. People can't see you, but man, can't get over it. All right. So, Mark, how are you? And where are you from?
From North Carolina originally. Live in Georgia now.
You live in Georgia now. What part of Georgia?
Atlanta, outside Atlanta, Duluth, Georgia.
Duluth. It's funny. I've been in Atlanta like 6 times in the last 5 years, and I get bored in the first day of Atlanta.
Come on.
I don't love it. I don't.
Do you go way down yonder on the Chattahoochee?
No, I'm staying in a hotel, and I got nowhere to go because I'm at a conference. And so I just walk out the hotel. I can get to the aquarium and the Cook Museum. And then I'm like, that's enough. Maybe I'll have dinner at the Hard Rock.
Like you,
yeah,
right by the aquarium, and you get bored, huh?
Well, not the aquarium doesn't bore me, but it was like I did it. And now I'm like, what else is there?
Yeah.
What else is
you
there?
Free on your birthday. I go every year on my birthday.
Really?
Pretty cool. Yeah.
When's your birthday?
November 22nd.
That's a good day. All right. Well, cool. Happy birthday.
It's coming. It's coming, or it's coming around the corner. Not soon, but later.
Soon, but later. All right. And so, Mark, what do you do in Atlanta?
So I work on hydropower issues and environmental issues. I work for the government. Most people just think I work for the EPA, but I don't. I'll tell you what I do, and then like a couple minutes will go by, and they're like, so you work for the EPA. That's enough.
So working with hydro, now I used to work at a hydro facility as an educator at a fish ladder, helping with fish migration. Do the dams you work at, the hydropower, it must be dams, do they impede migratory fishes, or do you not have migratory fishes on those areas?
Yeah, so fish passage is certainly an issue that gets looked at when they license these facilities. So yeah, they're fish passage is a deal. Yeah. So, sometimes they get passed and sometimes they don't.
Sometimes they don't. Yeah.
Where we can.
Yeah. We did a study on our dam with Atlantic salmon, and I got to tag about 500 Atlantic salmon smolts. And it was the funniest thing. I was like 25 years old, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service came in with a whole truckload of these smolts. And we had to tag them. And the radio tags we used were like the size of a Tic Tac with a long wire coming out of them. And to get them in, you had to put them down the fish's throat, and you had to dip them in KY jelly, and then use a pencil eraser and shove them down the throat of these fishes. And then you would throw the fish into the river. But we ran out of KY jelly, so I had to go to CVS, and I had to buy a case of KY jelly from CVS, and it was
kind of awkward.
It was the most embarrassing thing I ever had to buy.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah, I bought a Kit Kat with it, so it'd be less impactful. I'm like, I'll take all that KY jelly and a Kit Kat too.
There you go.
For the energy I'm going to need after. So we did that, and we lubed them up, and we shoved them on these fishes, and we dumped them all in the river. And they were looking for to see do these fish survive going downstream like through the penstocks. Do you know what a penstock is, Mark?
I do.
See, I'm talking dam. See? So
Talking about language.
Yeah. All right. So tell people what a penstock is if they don't know.
Well, so do you mean going through the turbine or the penstock? So the penstock being just kind of a long water conveying structure, but going down through the turbines can be tricky for down migrating fish.
Absolutely. So the penstock in our dam was meant as downstream passage for fishes, like a way around the penstock. And after they did the study, by the way, they built a brand new downstream passage because they found none of the salmon used the penstock, and all of them used the turbines to go down. And so they were just going right down through the turbines, getting spun around in circles, and then getting spat out the other end. And we have a resident population of striped bass that live below the turbines,
hungry.
and they just ate all these salmon. Just complete waste.
Yeah, that's a lot of money shoved downstream, huh?
It was very fun. Yeah, I didn't.
All
care.
for science.
All for science. Yeah. Now that salmon program does not exist anymore. They did it for like 30 years, and they never got more than like 2 salmon returning from an ocean trip.
Tricky.
It's tricky. But what the salmon programs like that do, even though this doesn't work for salmon, is the river got opened up for herring, sea lamprey, shad, and other migratory fish. So it is nice. They call the salmon like the Bambi fish. That's the cute and cuddly thing that brings money in and attracts tourists and people. But really, it's not really about the salmon. It's about everything else getting better. So
Charismatic megafauna.
that's exactly the word I was thinking for, but I couldn't find.
I don't know if salmon have ever been accused of being that, but hey, close enough, right?
Well, in my world, that's that's how it worked. So
There you go.
oh, that's cool. And you fish obviously because you wouldn't be here probably if you didn't.
I do. Yeah, I'm kind of out of practice as a biologist, but I do love to fish and turn over rocks and canoe and spend time on the Chattahoochee River. I have a few kids running around, and so I like to take them fishing as well, trying to keep them keyed into it. So
Good.
Yeah, I love it.
What was the last fish you went fishing for?
I caught 2 weeks ago. I caught about a 5-pound bass in my neighborhood pond, so that was a pretty good one. But usually bass and bluegill, and then some trout, rainbow and browns on the Chattahoochee.
On the Chattahoochee. Well, I wish I knew you when I was visiting Atlanta because I would have happily fished instead of toured the city. So
Next time, Clay, I'll come pick you up.
that'd be great. It'd be great. Yeah, my friend Norm lived down in Atlanta, and he took me to a brewery on my very last day there, and it was fabulous. All right, so you caught a bass, and do you guys do you eat fish you catch?
I like to eat fish. I didn't. This one seemed. I think it was a pre-spawn female, so I let her go. But yeah, I'll eat bass out of the pond too. Smoke them, make a little smoked fish dip.
That sounds delightful. That sounds really good. All right, well, I want to get into this is not news. This is just kind of something I want to talk about. I found this on the internet today. It made me love the internet. I don't know if you got a chance to look at this, but in Japan, they're working on a new invention. And it's from a company called MA Corporation, M-A Corporation. It's known as a Katsugyo bag. And what it is, it looks like an old-timey 1920s pressure tank. Like if you were in the hospital, they put you in this big pressurized tank. But you carry it. It's got knobs and stuff on it. You fill it with water, and you put in live fish in it, and it's a clear tube, and you carry your fish around.
It looks like something out of the Jetsons.
I know it's like
torpedo looking thing.
Yeah, it's like very modern, but also very like steampunk.
Steampunk. There you go.
At the same time,
strange invention.
Yeah, very strange. It's not on the market yet, and the idea is not for you to put your pet fish in it, but in Japan they love their sashimi, and they want it to be as fresh as possible. And there's nothing more fresh than a live fish. So the idea is you go to the market with your I said it fine a minute ago. Katsugyo bag, and then you bring your live fish home with you, and then you can deal with your sashimi at home. So, but they're really cool looking.
Absolutely. I was thinking more for like the aquarium trade or something. I don't know, walking your fish down and selling it to the next guy. But yeah, sashimi. There you go.
Yeah. Now it's interesting, and they have a lot of great pictures on. I'll put a link up on the show notes. But interestingly, I was thinking about this, like in New Hampshire where I live. You would not be able to transport any like wild fish in this thing. It would be completely illegal.
Yep.
Because transporting live fish in most states is illegal because they don't want you moving fish from one body of water to the other. But aquarium trade, I think you're right on the money. but you wouldn't be able to do game fish on there. So like using it for sashimi would probably be a fail here in the United States, but I still kind of want one.
Do you have one coming your way? Did you order one yet?
No, I should email the good people at my corporation and see if they'll send me a sample one I can review on the show.
Maybe that's their next sponsor too.
Maybe. You know what? I would put a fall fish in there. That's what I would do. That's what I do. All right, cool. You want to do some news?
Let's do some news.
All right. Wrong button. I do this every time. Wrong button again.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
Everybody loves the fish in the news, our favorite part of the show. And Mark, I asked you to grab a story or two. Do you want to share a story with us?
Yeah, sure. Maybe you already heard about these. I don't know. It's the type of thing that when you start looking stuff up on the internet, then your computer starts showing you the same news over and over again. So I keep seeing about this record sturgeon caught last week in the Detroit River. Did you hear about that? Did you see it?
I did hear about that. In fact, Doc Martin knows the guy who caught it.
Oh man, what do I have to add to this?
We haven't covered the story though. But
All right, yeah. Doc Martin could probably cover it better through that personal interaction. But yeah, it was a lake sturgeon on the Detroit River, which apparently there's some discussion about whether it's a river or a strait.
What is the difference?
Strait? Do you think the Detroit River is a river or a strait?
I don't know the difference.
I don't either. And it sounds like a strait is a water body or a channel connecting two water bodies, whereas a river has more of a gradient. But the Detroit River is a river and a strait, apparently.
Well, why can't it be both? Because I fish a lot down at Folly Beach, South Carolina, and I fish the Folly River, which separates Folly Beach from the mainland, and I think it's more of a strait now that you're saying it.
Yeah, I think about the strait, like Strait of Juan de Fuca and
Out in Washington, yeah.
Yeah,
My parents live on that strait. Yeah.
It's interesting. There was some discussion in some of the news articles about it. But anyway, so Detroit River, which is also the Detroit Strait, I guess. Mm-hmm. The lake sturgeon there, almost 7 feet long, 240 pounds, 4 feet in girth. And it crushed the current world record, which was 168 pounds. But this one was not caught hook and line. So it was caught by the Fish and Wildlife Service you're talking about earlier. So they were doing some sampling in the Detroit River. And I guess it's the strait or the river that connects Lake Erie and Lake St. Clair. So they were doing their annual sampling. And the way they do that is they're long lining frozen round goby on the bottom.
No, what, goby?
Yeah, frozen round goby. Stick them on the I guess they got into this huge female sturgeon. And so as I mentioned, I used to work as a fish biologist, had some pretty cool experiences sampling fish here and there, but imagine that's your job. You're bouncing around gobies off the bottom, and then you hook into this 240-pound sturgeon. So,
my goodness, that sounds like fishing more than biologing.
Yeah, pretty neat though, huh? Getting paid for fishing.
Not bad at all. I used to, when I was working at the Amoskeag Fishways, the fish ladder I was talking about, we used to go out and do fish sampling with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and we would electroshock the rivers to sample the fish.
Yeah, I've done a lot of that too. I did some work on Lake Michigan and did catch some round gobies. I needed them for the research I was doing. And the best way, we did some hook and line. We ended up just seining them. That was the easiest way to get them. But then I was looking for smallmouth bass too for some of the research. And it turned out, in the netting and the electrofishing that we wanted to do, it wasn't as good as just good old fashioned hook and line.
It works. Well, I went out.
Fish.
I went out with Atlantic, not Atlantic, got Atlantic Aquarium in my mind. I went out with the Virginia Aquarium, and I got to go help them catch fish for the aquarium. And guess how we did it?
Hook and line?
Yeah, we went fishing. That was it.
Cool.
The only trick is, and they were very funny about it, the only trick is we never touched the fish with our hands. And that's how we pretended we were doing better than fisher people. So
you win. Huh?
We totally are. Totally funny. Yeah, it was really funny. It was like vegan fishing. We were like pretending to be better than anybody else. Oh no, we're not touching the fish.
Wow. Well, this sturgeon was apparently they estimated about 100 years old. I don't think they aged it specifically or haven't yet, but yeah, about 100 years old. So think about the Detroit River and all that's happened in 100 years. So pretty wild. That thing was swimming around 100 years ago, hatched 100 years ago.
And how many, gosh, how many cars has floated past this fish?
Yeah.
Cars and mafia hitmen.
Yeah. What has it seen?
Wow. It's seen everything. It's seen too much. Has to go.
Yeah. The sturgeon aren't doing so hot, but I think there's maybe better days ahead as far as the pollution the fish have seen and the overfishing. So I think they've got some of that stuff under control. So
yeah, but now that people know there's giant sturgeon there, maybe people will go after them.
Because everybody's listening to this podcast, and now they're gonna know, and they're gonna go after them. So
we have tens of people going to get them.
Tens of people. Man, bad news.
I know, bad news for the sturgeon. All right, cool. Is there anything else in the story? Sturgeon, is that the whole story?
Yes, I guess that's about it. Yeah, pretty neat story. Big fish. Got me excited.
I do get excited. It's funny. Do you trophy fish? Are you excited about catching big fish?
Some, yeah. That's not my primary motivation, but yeah, when you catch a big one, you get excited about it. I did go for a Goliath grouper several years ago, and that was just pure trophy. So there's parts of me that enjoy it. But
did you catch it?
I caught one, and I don't know how much you know about him, but you can't take him out of the water. It's down in Florida, in the Tampa area.
Yeah.
One that was about 100 pounds, which for me was
huge.
For Goliath grouper is pretty small.
Right.
I think the guide was not, he didn't feel like he'd had a great day's guiding.
Oh, poor guy. Now, the groupers are scary because they look like giant bass mouths that can probably swallow you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're scary. I don't like it.
Open up that operculum and just suck in all that water, and yeah, they're huge.
Yeah, I don't like them.
You don't like them.
I'm scared of them, but I should go get one next time I'm in Tampa. I'll look up your guide. All right, I brought a story about fish sticks from the Atlantic, and the story, the headline is "Fish Sticks Make No Sense." It's like the history of fish sticks. I'm not going to bring you. I'll bring you part way through the history of fish sticks here in this story here. But fish sticks first came out back in October 1953. So they're relatively new food, and currently, by the way, there's a factory in Germany that produces enough fish sticks to circle the entire Earth 4 times. And the record number of fish sticks stacked into a tower is 74. So there's a record you could try to beat.
That seems beatable.
It is, but it doesn't. I think stacked one on top of the other, not like Jenga style where you're like doing 3 in a row. Yeah. Must be what?
Oh, I said less beatable then. If you can't do it Jenga style, I'm out.
Yeah, forget it. Because now Jenga fish sticks sounds good. Do you eat fish sticks?
Not with any kind of regularity.
So there's been some question with fish sticks over the years of how sustainable they are. So do you know what most fish sticks are made from?
I thought they were pollock.
They are Alaskan pollock, right? Same thing you get when you go to McDonald's and get your filet of fish.
Filet of fish.
Yeah, which according to all the sources, that I've done some little homework on this, sustainable.
When you asked what are they made out of, I guess I should have said flour and fat.
Yeah, meat.
Not fish.
Well, so they are made from fish. We're going to talk about how they're made in a few minutes, but they're so beloved. And by the way, at the time they were made, by Birdseye, by the way, there was lots of other stick foods being tried out. So some of the examples are they're all called rectangular foods, by the way, if you're looking to categorize your foods. But they had chicken sticks and ham sticks and veal sticks, eggplant sticks, dried lima bean sticks, but only the fish stick survived the time. And why is that? Why is that? And that's the question that we don't actually know why it survived. Actually, we have some theories about it, and the story goes into it. But mostly, the problem is after the war, World War II, we started fishing a lot, and we had a problem. We were catching too many fish, but not enough Americans were eating the fish. So the problem was we have all this fish. We now have the technology to flash freeze the fish, but we have got too much of it. How do we get more fish in front of people? And then the idea was, why don't we season them, package them, make them taste not like fish, and sell them to the masses? And that's why fish sticks had to be invented.
Wow.
Is over.
People, not a bad goal.
Not a bad goal. And so fish sticks over the years have like some people love them. Like I think they're kind of just like they're okay. You know, they taste like whatever dip you dip them in.
So I'm going to take us on a tangent here, but have you ever heard of fish wings? I think they were called.
No.
Carp wings. I think they were called.
No.
I was at an event one time. I think this was 2012, Minneapolis, and they served. I think they were calling them carp wings. So it looked like a fish stick.
Mm-hmm.
It was, say 6-inch long, kind of rectangular fish stick looking thing, but it was made out of the Asian carp, the jumping Asian carp there.
Delicious.
And so you take it in your hand and you would kind of crack it in half. And there's a bone in them. That's one of the reasons that they're having trouble marketing those Asian carp as food. It's not because they don't taste good, but it's just they're kind of bony. They're tough to handle. There's a lot of videos out there on YouTube about how to do it. But anyway, so these fish wings, you take them in your hand. It looks like a fish stick. You break it in half, and one half has no bone in it, and the other half has the bone in it.
Mm-hmm.
You pop the half that has no bone in it in your mouth, and then you pull the bone out of the other side, pop the other half, and then throw the bone away. So
I'm in.
Weird. It was like a natural fish stick almost.
I'm in. I once ate a common carp, and
how'd that go for you?
it was delicious. And because it's in the minnow family, and in my experience, all minnows are delicious. Because I've eaten, in New Hampshire, I've eaten all the minnow species in the state. But because carp is our biggest minnow, but it was very, very good. But I did find that bones to be big, like chicken bone size inside of it. The rib bones are nice and big and easy to deal with. And I never let people tell me bony fish is a reason they don't eat fish, because people eat trout like crazy. They're so proud of eating trout, and trout are super bony. Like you end up with this carcass of bones on your plate afterwards. So I think bones is a bad reason not to eat a fish.
Well, people eat bony chicken,
Yeah,
and bony steak, and bony ribs.
exactly. Oh, bony ribs are my favorite kind of ribs. Yeah,
Exactly.
In fact, I get mad too. My wife buys me. I've been eating a lot of. It's a chicken thing, but I've eaten a lot of chicken thighs lately because they're so cheap, and I like them. But I hate. My wife buys them without bones and skin, and I'm like, why bother?
Floppy.
Yeah, why bother?
Fatty.
Don't waste my time.
Get it out of my face.
Okay, let's get back to fish sticks. So fish sticks are beloved by a lot of people. My wife, one of her favorite meals is fish sticks, frozen peas, and a little bowl of ketchup to go with it. Like that's on a plate. That's all she'll have on her plate. She loves it.
Advertising.
Yeah, they're tolerated by others, and they've even been featured in South Park. And so we're going to play a little clip here from South Park, and we'll see. Let's decide if this is funny or not.
And now here he is, Jimmy Kimmel.
All right, hey, how we all feeling tonight? So, let me ask the guys in the audience a question. Do you like fish sticks?
Yes.
Huh. What are you, gay fish?
I'm not sure I get it.
What are you, Paul, a gay fish? So apparently more and more Americans are eating fish sticks. Have you seen this? Have you read about this? Loving fish sticks. Kind of makes me wonder, What is everybody, a gay fish? It is quite possibly the funniest joke ever conceived, and its origin is unknown. The fish sticks joke crosses all borders, all races, all ages and ethnic groups, and is slowly uniting our country. In fact, the only person who appears to not get the joke is rapper Kanye West, who becomes furious when people use the joke on him.
Yo, that is messed up, yo. I am not gay, and I sure as hell ain't no fish, all right?
You really don't get it.
Hey, man, I'm a genius, all right? I'm the most talented musician
I'm
in
going
the
to fade
world.
that out right there. I think that's enough. I don't quite get it, but
Yeah, not following.
not following. But they go on. But South Park, they'll do that joke forever until it beats it into people's head, and it ends with Kanye West not liking that people do the joke on him, and he blows up on the whole world. So that's because it's Kanye. So, but anyway, fish sticks have made their way into pop culture as we've heard, and they really are popular all around the world. When Queen Elizabeth II celebrated her 90th birthday in 2016, Birdseye presented her with a sandwich that included blanched asparagus, saffron mayo, edible flowers, caviar, and most prominently, gold leaf encrusted fish sticks. So really big deal. It is impressive. It is impressive. Anyway, so they become popular all over the world, starting way back in the day. So, but it doesn't make any sense. But 13 companies in 1953, when it came out, produced 3.4 million kilograms of fish sticks. A year later, 4 million kilograms were produced by 55 companies, and it kept surging throughout the year. So it's been really popular since forever. But there it is. That's fish sticks, and you can read the whole article. I'll put a link up at fishnerds.com. But yeah, fish sticks, they're improbable popular food there for you.
Making me hungry.
I know. It's funny because we'll make fish stick shaped fish food for the kids. Now, do you know how they make them?
No idea.
So I've seen this done in real life because years ago, I don't know if you listened to the older episodes, but Dave Kellen, my previous co-host from back when we first started, and we actually had a contract with a large corporation who did fish packaging. They were a fish company. And we blew the deal up because we weren't able to produce what we said we could. So we lost all that money in the deal. They were going to fly us to Greenland and look at their fishing operations and everything. But we were like, we had 10 listeners and no idea how to make a podcast, and we were able to get this deal going. But we got to go in and watch how they do it. So these fish are all caught, at sea, and they're flash frozen at sea. They're processed right in the ocean. And they take the fish sticks and they have machines that cut them into perfect rectangles, right? It's like a conveyor belt, just ka-chung, ka-chung, while it's still frozen. And then while it's still frozen, they get doused in seasoned flour and into some kind of I don't know if it's egg wash or some sort of a wash that makes them sticky. And then they're breaded, and then they're flash fried for about 15 seconds, still frozen, and then put right back in the freezer again.
And wait, at sea, or did I miss that part?
No, they bring them back to the factory. So
I was going to say that's quite an operation.
Yeah, no, they're frozen at sea. They're brought into the packing plant. They're cut. It's all done while it's frozen. Cut into the shape, and then they're through the conveyor belt. They're flavored, breaded, and then they fry them while frozen. They never get thawed out the whole time, and it's only fried for like 10 seconds. Yeah, it was really cool to see how they put that together. It's kind of amazing, and it happens really fast.
There's a lot of people eating fish sticks, so it's got to be automated. It's got to go quick.
Yeah, a lot of pollock getting killed for our bellies. You got another story?
I got another story. I stayed with the record theme. I don't know if I stayed with the record theme or that's just what the internet wanted me to see. But
well, I'm glad you did, because I saw those stories come up and I said, I don't feel like talking about his records today. And then
you know what I'm going to talk about today? Records.
Yeah, I'm glad.
So this was the tuna in Texas, record bluefin tuna.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was big. The part of the story I'll get to it. So guy out of Texas was fishing, caught a 876-pound bluefin tuna. A couple crazy things, but one of the wild things to me was, so it took him 9 hours to get it into the boat. But the last hour and a half apparently was spent, they had pulled it to the boat, and then they spent the last hour and a half trying get it on the boat. It was a picture to me. It was a bunch of fellows just trying to lift this thing, heave-ho it onto the boat, struggling in an hour and a half. That's pretty wild, huh?
That's insane. And now I understand that. So I went shark fishing once, and we caught a 240-pound shark. And we had a hard time getting that in the boat. And it was cooperating. It wanted to be in the boat. So I can't imagine getting a fish that doesn't want to get into the boat that weighs that much. What was the weight of that fish again?
Yeah, it was 876.
I can't even understand in my brain hole what that looks like for a fish.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those boats with the big with kind of like the trapdoor thing in the back. I suppose so, but still, just a bunch of ladies and gentlemen trying to heave-ho that thing and pull it in there was just a wild thought for me. Another interesting part of the story I thought was, and this was just something I didn't know. They said there in Texas, you're not allowed to target bluefin tuna, but if you inadvertently catch one as bycatch, then you're allowed to keep, and I didn't look into all the rules, but you kind of have to pay for a permit after the fact and then report it within 20 days. So yeah, they've got this system for, if you catch, you're not supposed to go for them, but if you do catch one, then you can keep it. So you don't have to, trash it. So pretty neat concept there, I thought.
I don't like it.
You don't like it?
No, because then you can target them and just lie. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm targeting elephants. Like it's so.
Well, so what do you think they were actually targeting out here? Any idea? Any guesses?
The cobia.
They were going for slightly bigger than cobia. They were going for swordfish and marlin.
Uh-huh.
And so I don't know enough about it. Just not exactly my bailiwick to know. But I suppose there's techniques for marlin that would be different than techniques for bluefins. Otherwise, yeah, it's kind of a silly rule, I guess. If you could just say, "Oh, nope, wasn't going for them." I suppose there'd be some gear and some bait that works, one for one and not the other. But not in this.
I don't know. I don't know. I've never caught a big tuna, and I'm not a big fan of fishing to kill giant predators like that. So I have kind of mixed feelings about it. I think on the one hand, I would love to be the guy who caught it, and on the other, I feel like it just stop it. So.
Yeah. Well, two good things came out of it. One was, I guess, Texas A&M came down and collected samples from the fish. I'm not sure exactly what they were doing with it, but yay science again.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that's advancing some kind of research questions there at A&M. But the other thing was apparently they've been eating the guy and his family and probably the whole town for an 876 pounder, but they've been enjoying eating it. And I guess sashimi, I saw in one of the articles, sashimi's been the food of choice. You mentioned sashimi earlier. So yeah.
Oh, perfect. I wonder if they will put it in the little carrying case and get it home.
You need the extra jumbo size, right?
Yes, right. I'll take the extra large, please. Now it's interesting because mostly like around here, when people get the big tunas, they don't keep them; they go to market.
Yeah,
because a fish like that's worth thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I wonder what the commercial operations are like down there. Probably not much going on and not much market.
It was in Texas, you say?
Yeah, Texas. Yep.
Is bluefin tuna?
Yep.
We're going to find out what the market price for bluefin tuna. $200 per pound. So doing the math on that, on an 800-pound fish, don't think I would be able to eat that fish.
I'm sure we've all seen the articles. What is it? The first one every year always goes for some astronomical amount of money in Japan. You've seen those articles before? It's
always that $200 per pound price is in Japan. But they would ship it happily from Texas to Japan.
They could find a way, right?
There's a way. Yeah, there's a way. If they can get it in the boat, that's the trick with something that big. Have you ever caught
That's all I got on that one. Yeah, pretty wild story. I thought just imagining those folks trying to get it into the boat just kind of made me laugh.
It's really funny. I mean, I once tried to help like a large human into my pontoon boat, and it was hard. So I imagine if that was like a bear-sized person with no fur and was very slippery and wiggly, that would be even more challenging. And they couldn't just strap it to the boat because they read The Old Man and the Sea, and there'd be no fish left when they got back to shore.
That's right.
So because they were well read, they had to lift it into the boat. If they were dumb, they would have dragged it back to the beach.
Big mistake.
Big mistake there. All right, I got one more story for you. And this one, I have mixed feelings about. Now, I picked this because you're a biologist kind of guy. Maybe you can help suss it out a little bit. So officials in Colorado are emptying a reservoir to eliminate voracious predators before it wipes out endangered species. And what they have is, so they're draining a Western Slope reservoir because they want to rid the lake of northern pike. And the northern pike are eating 4 species of endangered fish that have been recovering for more than 3 decades. So have you heard of this kind of thing happening?
I heard of a similar story that I'll get to in a minute. Well, I guess up your neck of the woods, the Penobscot River, they were worried about the pike's effect. If they removed some of the Penobscot dams, they were worried about I think pike, getting at the salmon.
Yeah, in Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not New Hampshire, but nearby.
Yeah, that's real close. So, yeah, it is a concern.
I hadn't heard of this one.
Yeah,
this was new to me.
Yeah, and so northern pike, just like in New Hampshire, are not native to the Colorado area where these pike are, and they're eating these fish. And their solution is to drain all the water out of the lake. And as they do it, they're going to capture every fish in the lake, and they're transporting those fish they catch into a different water body.
Are the endangered fish currently in the reservoir?
Yes, and the pikes are eating.
They're gonna take those fish and move them elsewhere and then pull it all down. Okay. All right. I'm tracking you.
Yeah. So do you want to know what the fish are?
Yeah. Let's hear it.
A humpback chub, a razorback sucker, the bony tail, and a Colorado pike minnow. Those are the 4 fish.
They're all living in that reservoir.
Yeah, it's called the Mac Mesa. Yeah.
And they're worried that the pike are going to eat up all the endangered fish.
Yeah. And as we know, pike are very hungry all the time. So the pike are eating these fish, and so they drain the lake out, and they were going to do it for the whole summer, drain it dry, and then fill it back up in the fall, and then restock it with all these fish.
With what fish?
With the same species of fish.
Okay.
As well as trout, largemouth bass, black crappie, bluegill, and channel catfish.
It makes you wonder what those bass are going to eat.
I know, right? Well, I mean, they'll eat the bluegill. You know, the bluegill, like in New Hampshire, there's a book we read called The Bassing of New Hampshire, and it documents what fish were brought to the state at different times. And bluegill and bass are both sunfish family fishes. They were both brought here at the same time, and bluegill were brought here to feed bass. Like the intention was, we have to bring bluegill because bass have to eat. Yeah, but they'll be, I'm sure, you know, whenever they say they're stocking, those are game fish they're discussing there, you know they're putting other minnows in and shiners, and there has to be more diversity than those 5 species of fish.
Yeah, this is, you got me intrigued. I'm going to look into this because it seems a little wild that I wonder if these fish are downstream of the reservoir and they're worried about pike escaping and going downstream, but yeah, who knows?
No, it's in the reservoir itself. Mm-hmm. And because people had brought the fish in from nearby water bodies and dumped them in there illegally. And they can't seem to capture them any other way. So because it's a reservoir, they can drain it. But I just worry about what that does to, like, you know, it just seems to me like such an extreme measure. Mm-hmm. You know, and I do ever like get to a point where you're like, maybe those other fish don't need to survive.
The deck is stacked against them.
It really is. You know, we get the pike in the system, and humans are dumb. So humans will dump pike back in again. But the other thing humans are dumb about is we also sometimes overreact. And I wonder, like, yeah, this must have been done somewhere before successfully. They didn't just, like, wasn't their idea.
Yeah, it'd be a pretty harebrained idea. Somebody's in a meeting around a conference table. Let's take down, you know.
Oh, you know what, Bob? I got it. What's that, Joe? We drain the water.
Pull her down.
Yep. Just open the dam up. Let it all go. What about the fish? Well,
we'll rescue them one by one.
Yeah, we got nets and boots. Y'all got boots?
I got boots. Let's do it. Let's go.
Let's go. We got 4 guys, boots, and a bucket. Go save all the fish. Drain it.
Man.
But my
plug.
Yeah, just like a toilet plug. And then like to the fish, their water's draining out. The fish get closer and closer together in there. Do the pike just start eating everything as it gets denser, the populations, or do they all panic and you have to like scoop them all out?
Yeah.
I want to see this operation.
Wild.
Yeah.
Did it already happen, or they're gonna do it? They're just telling us they're gonna do it.
I'm scanning now.
Oh, the complete draining is underway
right now. And then, they're going to fill it up in May. So it's going to drain and right away fill it right back up again.
What are we doing here? We need to go there.
I know. The other question I have is, like, what happens to other aquatic animals in that ecosystem? Mm-hmm. You know, you've got plants, you've got macroinvertebrates, you've got insects, you've got all kinds of stuff to deal with that you're going to kill by draining that out.
Yeah, and how long is it going to take? I mean, they have cattails, or who knows what they've got.
Who knows? So, I might have to do some research and follow up on this kind of interesting story. Maybe I can find some video somewhere, too.
But, I trust biologists. So
I do, too. But I don't.
They've got a plan. I hope they've got a plan.
Well, I don't got a plan, but I got a bucket. All right, that was fish. That was fish in the news.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
What other podcasts do you like?
In the fish realm, I've been listening to what's that one called? The Fisheries Podcast, the fisheries scientist guys doing that.
I don't think I heard that one.
Yeah, it's mostly like talking about fisheries research. There's another fishing one that I listen to, The Itinerant Angler. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I have.
Pretty highbrow.
That's
fly
been around a
fishing.
long time.
Yeah, that guy lives in Atlanta.
I thought he was in D.C.
No, he's a lawyer in Atlanta.
Oh, you should really?
Yeah, but he's written for, Orvis and all this kind of fancy fly fishing magazines and stuff. I listen to that one. I listen to some meat eater stuff, hunting stuff.
Yeah. Have you heard their show, the Bent podcast?
Yeah, I just started. I've been listening.
Yep.
It's yeah. Do you listen to it?
No. No, I have listened to it. I don't listen to other fishing podcasts because I find myself stealing jokes and ideas. And I find myself or just not like him. Yeah. So I listened to a podcast called Fish of the Week from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which I love. Oh, I have to talk about boats that are a little bit here. Do you want to go out on a boat? Everyone does. Do you own a boat yourself? Well, Boatsetter is the go-to platform for all types of boating experiences, including fishing. It's also a way for charters to grow their business or for a boat owner to rent out their boat to make some money. To sign up to list your boat for rent or for charters, tell Boatsetter that Fish Nerds sent you. The team will send you a free swag package when your boat listing is complete. Visit boatsetter.com, BOATSETTER.com, or download the Boatsetter app to plan your next adventure. Get 5% off when you book with the code FishNerds. Just kind of sidebar here. The guys over at Boatsetter Ed and Luke came on the Fish Nerds a couple of years ago. They used to run a company called Fisher Guiding, and they merged up with Boatsetter. And this is a personal thing. These guys are the first people ever to come through the Fish Nerds, make it big, and then come back and support the Fish Nerds. We've had hundreds of guests come through running their products through our show, and not one has ever come back with that kind of support. And we really do appreciate it an awful lot. So if you like the Fish Nerds, you got to make sure, please support boatsetter.com, BOATSETTER.com. We've had people come through our show and get on Shark Tank and win big and not come back to us. So it just really means a lot to us. And they're a really great company. And if you got a boat, your boat can earn you money when you're not using it. Boatsetter.com. And if you're on vacation or somewhere, put that app on your phone and you can get a boat to take yourself out and go fishing. Boatsetter.com. Thank you guys for sponsoring the Fish Nerds podcast. Now, we've got to talk about Doc Martin. Doc Martin has to break into the show today to give us some really important fraudulent fishy science. And we're going to get her on right now. Here's Doc. Oh, yes. It is some time to do some science. Saying Doc Martin is joining me. Last night, in the middle of the night, I got a message from Doc Martin saying, Clay, we need to cover this breaking news story right now. And it's some fish news, it's some science, and it is controversy and scandal. So we have to cover it because we are, that's what we do here. We do sciencing sometimes. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning. And speaking of things that might be fraudulent, I'm not 100% confident that midnight was the appropriate time frame because I definitely need my sleep. And I know for sure that I was in bed before 10 p.m. Central Time. So
right. No, I think I said middle of the night.
Is 10 p.m. the middle of the night now?
For me, if you go to bed early enough and get up early enough.
That's fair. That's fair.
Be. Yeah. It depends on your timeline for sleep.
Context.
I know that those old people like us who get up at 4 a.m, middle of the night is different than people who go to bed at 11 o'clock.
That is definitely true. Yeah. I think it was that warning to all of my students, like, hey, I'm a morning person. If you email me after 6 o'clock p.m., I'm probably not going to answer until 4 or 5 the next morning.
Right. I'm a goner. All right. So let's jump right into this because this is important fraudulent news. And I think it's really important as science-y minded people that we don't just report positive stories. We have to get into it when things go wrong. So I'm going to let you take us through this now.
And I think the important thing to note is this is a really unfortunate but great example of science self-correcting itself, right? It was other scientists that came in to find the right answer. That means the process is working. But there were some scientists that have published Since 2012 or 2010, several papers on ocean acidification and its effect on fish behavior. So, making fishes more bold, steering fishes toward chemicals produced by their predators. Those are some.
Yeah, I was reading about that. They were making. They said they claimed it was clownfish or some fish that they were claiming.
I don't remember which species.
They were claiming, with the right levels of acid, they'd be attracted to the scent of a predator.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a significant amount of attraction.
Right. Well, that's the whole thing.
The population.
Statistical significance.
Yeah. Pretty extraordinary claim.
Yeah, that is. It'd be very bizarre, obviously harmful, right? If you're more attracted to predators, that's really bad for your population and reproduction, sustainability, all that stuff. This claim did make it into the 2014 climate IPCC report, which basically was a statement of profound consequences for marine diversity. So, of course, that statement itself is very broad, right? We already know ocean acidification is real. That is not the thing that's under question here. We know that that's happening. That's illustrated time and time again by multiple scientists across the board. This is something that's a little bit more specific out of one lab dealing with several scientists, 2 labs, I guess now, because one of the scientists was under the original PI, principal investigator, and then they moved to a different university to establish their lab, right? This is exactly what I did. I had a PhD advisor, and then I moved, got a university job, and now I have my own lab. So that's kind of how that works.
Fancy pants.
And we do kind of similar-ish research still, because that's how I was trained, right? Anyway, and so we do know that obviously changes in pH, that's a big deal for organisms on a lot of different levels, just cellular processes, habitat requirements, all of that other stuff. And so one of the aspects of profound consequences for marine diversity could be this change in fish behavior. And so that's how we would unpack that sentence. And it turns out that in 2020, a group of other scientists tried to reproduce the studies that show ocean acidification changes fish behaviors. They did a huge, very robust 3-year study, and they didn't see any dramatic effects of ocean acidification on fish behavior at all.
Right. I think one important thing to remind listeners who aren't science background people, the whole point of the scientific process and method and publication is replication.
Right.
It's the idea that I can make a claim, give you the data, and you've got enough information where you can repeat that experiment or do the same study and get the same results. That's why we do it. That's why we publish papers. That's like the whole point right there.
Right. That's exactly right.
And that's what
I think it's also really important to say that to have one paper find, especially in ecology, to have one paper find certain effects and have a subsequent paper that is maybe of similar methodology, but maybe a different location finds differing or conflicting effects. I'm writing a paper right now on wetland macroinvertebrates, and we're trying to find out like how that diversity deals with different things. And when you go and look at the literature, you say, well, the wetlands over in this region, they do this, and the wetlands over here do this, and it kind of depends on, well, what definition of a wetland are you using, and all of these different variables. So having conflicting results is not a big deal in science, and also not really surprising. It's doing that repetition to find generalities in patterns. Does that make sense?
It makes good sense. Yeah.
Good.
Well, it's important because people, a lot of non-science people too, will look at this stuff and go, yeah, see, science, that's why you can't trust it, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas the opposite should be the brain space. Like, you can trust it because it's correcting. It's looking at itself over and over again. That's why you can trust it. And you see, especially right now in the era of COVID, you see a lot of this kind of conversation happening on Facebook where science will say a thing, and then a few weeks later they go, oh, hey, we found out this new information, so let's correct that previous statement. And that is what people use to like be kind of the anti-science folks. It's a weird,
which is I mean, that's the whole irony, right? Of they're like, oh my God, science, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to. How dare you? And it's like, I mean, if that's if that's the message that you want to receive, I guess I can't stop you. It's so inherently wrong. What do you even do with that? Like, just are they willfully not wanting to understand this? I'm not really sure.
I don't know. Is it a new thing to be like against being wrong? Like this notion that being wrong is such a terrible event.
So I don't think so.
It's such a hard brain space.
Yeah, I talk about that in the class I teach in the fall, right, Clay, that you're involved with, is this notion of being wrong. And it turns out that a lot of people take certain weird stances like that because it something about that, in this case science, something about the science, whatever aspect that is, conflicts with their core beliefs. I mean, and that's really what it is who are you as a person? What are your core beliefs? And if something threatens that, it turns out change is hard and change is really, really scary. And you kind of just go through this whole denial and, you don't want to believe it because it hurts your ego, it hurts your feelings, it makes you feel stupid. And that's a really uncomfortable feeling. It's a very uncomfortable
Or even
feeling.
worse than that. Even worse than that, it ruins a good story because this 2014 study, I reported on this a few years ago because I found it interesting. Because I love the notion that like this chemical, the acid change in the ocean, could change a fish's behavior so much that it would be attracted to its predators. Right. And to me, that's like an amazing story to tell. And I've told it enough times, and people have repeated enough times where it's almost part of the zeitgeist. So when this new data comes in, showing that not to be a thing,
right?
It's really hard to change. Well, now I got to ditch a story I've been telling.
Well, welcome to science. That's exactly what happens.
It's so hard.
It is, and I mean, it's humbling too, right? To say, oh well, hey, I wanted to trust scientists, and this seemed like it was pretty legitimate, and now other data is coming out that says it isn't, and well, where does that put me? It's like, well, it puts you in a great place because you learned something new, and now you can talk about the new thing that you learned, right?
Right. Right. So let's talk about the data a little bit.
Yes, because that's where
why it was problematic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's not the big deal is not that scientist A found this thing and scientist B did not find this thing. That's something that happens all the time. It's really, really standard, like I said, especially in kind of ecological studies, depending on all the different variables and factors that you have going on. The problem here is that when the data that were used by the original group were scrutinized, there were some problematic inconsistencies, which is really, really vague terminology for saying we don't think these data are real.
Right. They didn't want to say fraud. They call it the F word in science. Like they're really afraid.
Well, and they haven't reached that point yet. They're still under investigation. Because sometimes shit's weird. That's how you can say it. Like sometimes things are really weird. I mean, I think of the physics that I learned. Physics is really freaking weird, right? So
that's true. Yeah.
Sometimes the weirdness is the reality, and you have to double check and make sure. And so that's where they're at right now. They're like, okay, these are weird. These are inconsistent with maybe what we would think based on some assumptions we have to make about how the data were collected or whatever those assumptions are, right? And so they're in the middle of double checking those, doing interviews with the scientists or any research helpers that were on the boat, collecting data, analyzing data, all that stuff. Unfortunately, some of the interviews have not given a positive spin on this either. So that's kind of
isn't one of the problems
the F word.
Yeah, the F word. Now, isn't one of the problems also that the expectation of scientists to hold on to their actual data collection devices, their lab notebooks and all that? That's kind of an expectation. And these guys did not keep that stuff.
Well, it depends. So yes and no. So I hang on to a lot of mine, but not all of mine. And so what I usually do is for some of the data that I have, I think for almost all of my publications, I have that raw data somewhere buried in a folder on my computer, right? And there's some of the data that I've used that is open access, the stuff on Kanza LTER. You can go and you can also find a lot of those data if you wanted to redo some of my analyses. And that kind of stuff. So it depends a little bit on where data live and what the projects are. But I would assume, based on the size and notoriety of the lab, yes, they would keep things like that. Now, there's other places where once they publish a paper, they start to discard of things so they don't have too much crap. But usually there's a wait period of like 5 to 10 years. Like you publish a paper, you wait 5 to 10 years before you start kind of discarding that stuff in your lab, or maybe even a little bit longer. But usually with data is something that's digital now, right? Especially since these are all stuff from the 2010s and later, right? I'm pretty sure.
Right.
And so that's very easy to store. I'm thinking of, we've taken measurements on pickled fish, where we collect a bunch of them, we sacrifice them, we take all their measurements, skin plugs, genetic analyses, whatever, and then you cannot keep these hundreds or thousands of jars of fish. You just cannot do it. And so that's something that gets, you throw out X percent and you keep some as vouchers just in case someone does want to come back and go and look at those things, right? So a little bit of gray area there, I guess, where it depends on just the study, the purpose, the amount of space something holds.
All right, so let's kind of drive back into this. And so the problem is, it looks like the appearance of fraud is there.
Yes.
And the new research is coming out. They can't replicate this. They can't kind of verify it. The interviews didn't go well.
Yep.
They can't find backing up information.
Right.
What happens?
Well, probably nothing good. I think the biggest problem is that, well, as we've already talked about, this is never good for science. It just never is. It feeds into that unfortunate narrative that the people that already don't trust science go, aha, look, fraud, oh my God, blah, 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 right?
Right. Not aha, we caught our own fraud, but aha, look, these guys are fraudulent, therefore everybody else is fraudulent.
Right, not that, hey, by the way, the people that caught the fraud, also scientists, right? Like that's the key there, is it's not the guy on Facebook, right? It's just like, I don't trust science, let me tell you about it in the comments. It's never that guy.
No.
Sorry, if you're that guy, come talk to us, right?
I doubt those guys are our listeners. I think our listeners are a little smarter than that. So,
I don't know. I don't know if I'd put it on a gauge of smartness. I think it's just maybe misguidedness. And
you're nicer than me. That's all. I think it's smartness.
But yeah, so there's that, right? It's just not good. But I think the really unfortunate fallout is there are probably a lot of scientists that are not the fraudulent scientists, right? So it's probably of the group that is publishing on that ocean acidification changes behavior. More than likely, of that huge group of people, it's like the one person that went in there and they were in charge of the data or something like that, and they're the ones that did the sneaky thing. And other scientists might not have known that they did it. But they're going to be co-authors on that work because they helped in the field. They started to catch the fish, or they did a lot of work writing in the introduction or designing things. And so they didn't actually do the data analysis per se, but they did a significant amount of work that gave them co-authorship.
Oh, can you imagine, Doc? Like you're working on your PhD dissertations and all this work, and you get published, you get your name on a paper, you're so proud of it. And then a few years later, you'll get tarnished with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, really, like that would be shocking. I mean, I'm not in a really big lab, so most of my papers are stuff that I've done myself, right? So it's like, I guess that'd be me then.
Yeah. Oh, so painful.
I mean, that would be pretty terrible. But I would hope. I feel pretty confident that if anyone did anything with my papers, they'd just be like, "Oh, well, she made a really stupid mistake," and I feel like that'd be the thing I'd have to live with,
Well, how do we do that? How do we discern just a mistake from fraud? How do we know the difference? Because what if it was
a really
just,
great question.
Oh shit, I made a mistake. Yeah.
Right. And so you can kind of tell. So a lot of the times a mistake is something where, you did a data analysis, and let's say that you meant to do like a type 2 ANOVA and you typed in the wrong alpha value in your model and you didn't realize you did that. And so it's like, oh, well, it's all statistical based on this level of significance. And it's like, oops, nope, you actually used the wrong level of significance, or just, something really silly like that. There's also just typos in the data. I've done this, I've caught it. I hope every time, but when you're looking at long data sheets and you're typing columns of data, 1.24, 2.34, and you're entering all those thousands of things. Sometimes you go 1.34432, and you combine two numbers into one, or you forget the decimal point. And when you do that, it can lead to erroneous conclusions just because you typed in the data wrong. Now, almost always. Because when I teach my data analysis class, I teach you ways to look for those things, right? to find
well,
those.
also when you run those numbers and you get your little graphs and all the stuff from the data,
right?
Those mistakes show because your graph looks weird. Yeah.
Right. Now it gets a little hard sometimes. So one of the variables I like to use is algal filament length as an example of that. And so you can go and measure this algal filament length just in centimeters. And you can have variable values from 0 to 5 to 10. And every once in a while, you'll get a value that's just like 98, right? 98 centimeters. It's just this crazy long filament. And if you did an analysis on those data, you would find those crazy high values and you would be like, you'd have to stop and pause and make sure, is that a real value or is that a typo? And you have to you have to know that. So if you did the data collection, you would know, first of all, right? But if you didn't do the data collection, if you're just a statistician, you have to talk to the person that took that data to know that answer. So there's sometimes that communication that happens too, right?
Right. Well, in this particular paper, the author, his name is Munday, M-U-N-D-A-Y. He is claiming that the block of 10 duplicated numbers, the mistakes in the data, are just human error. That he will correct.
And that's what's under investigation, right? We don't know.
Right.
The interviews that were done by some of the fellow researchers suggest that might not be the case. But you don't know until the investigation is over. And so that's just how it is, because that's not completely false. I don't think that's outside of the realm of possibility. Everybody makes mistakes kinds of things. But sometimes you do things out of desperation because you want to see the right answer.
Right. So what are the impacts here? So this person, Monday, has put other papers out. Does this mean people are going to dig in deeper in his other research and start really kind of find out how deep does this go? Is it a common thing for him to do this kind of thing? Or do we just take
I think it depends.
one thing as it
So I know there's been some folks that have been shown definitively to have had at least one or more fraudulent papers. Okay. And when they find one, it's very definitely fraud. This is clearly just absolutely made up. This is no way relevant. They do go back and look at some of their other work. But if it turns out that this case study gets over and they're like, you know what, you guys just made a really embarrassing, stupid mistake, that still means that the conclusions from their work are not good. But it also means it wasn't purposeful. And so if that's the case, my guess would be there would be less of that, of going back in time and looking.
Right. It's a lot of work and a lot of expense. Now, what would be the motivation for creating this kind of fraud?
Yeah, so it kind of depends. I know there was one guy in physics that was pretty famous. You probably know this case that made it on the front page of some of the really big magazines, Science and all that other good stuff. And it turns out that his data were totally made up, 100%, just absolutely bogus bonkers. And did it for fame, right? Which seems, I don't think you can claim that for these scientists. I mean, no offense to like all of our awesome marine biology people or fish ecology people, but if you're like me, I mean, can anyone name a famous fish ecologist? Like,
I can't name one.
right.
Yeah.
Most people can't. So it's probably not the same, is what I'm saying.
Right.
But there is some pressure to publish in peer review literature, particularly at R1 and R2 universities or research institutes, so high output level. You have to have so many publications in a certain tier of journal. Does that make it okay? No. However, why would that make you have fraudulent, statistically significant data? I'm so glad you asked, Clay. And so it turns out there's a huge publication bias. If you submit a paper for publication where you have a significant result versus a very similar paper where you don't have significant results, it is more likely that the paper with significant results will be published. And that's a huge and very well-known problem
because it's juicy, right? It's got the story behind it. That was exciting because it changed the behavior of the fish so significantly.
That's exactly
if it was like, we did all this work and found nothing, who cares?
Right. And that's it. I mean, that's really the crux of it, is that, it's all about, it makes a better story. And so it's just easier to publish because you did find a thing.
So science publications are just like most other media. They want people to read it. They want the attention. They want the stories. And so that kind of bias is what what correlates with this kind of behavior.
Right. And I mean, we've really, I'd say since the 90s, we've really, really got a pretty good understanding that is a problem that we as a scientific community need to deal with. Exactly how we deal with that is hard, because it's not just like someone sitting there going, this is statistically significant, we should definitely publish this and definitely not publish. Like, that's not what's happening, right? That it's not purposeful. Right. It kind of just makes sense because those statistically significant stories tell a story, right?
Yeah, when we're human, we like stories.
Exactly. And so it's a really trickier thing to get around, because it's not something that people are doing knowingly for that one. That's just a tough thing to fix. If you don't know you're doing that, then what do you do?
Now, when we do know stuff like this, we're seeing this a lot in our modern culture as well. Like if you think like the woke culture and all that, we overcorrect sometimes too. Is that a possibility? Now, will we be over scrutinizing and over worrying when this happens, or do we?
I'm not 100% confident that there can ever be too much scrutiny when it comes to something that should be peer-reviewed science.
Right.
I mean, if you're going to do it, and even if it's, significant, not significant in a high-tier journal, or maybe make a mid-tier journal or just a local journal or whatever it's going to be, your paper should be able to stand up to the scrutiny.
That's the whole point.
Right. That's exactly the whole point. But we are all human. And so, it's if you've ever been on peer review, so I am the editor, right, of a peer reviewed journal. That's part of my job that I do. And so I do a lot of peer reviewing, and I try to make sure that the thing I'm reading is reasonable and done well. That's a very hard thing to do on the outside. You don't always know how the data are collected, and to some extent, you have to trust the authors that are giving you the paper. You have to.
And that's why it's so important that when we see fraud like this, we grab it and point it out, so that way we know who we can trust, because these guys' now reputation is tarnished.
The unfortunate part is the bigger the authors are, probably the less tarnished they might be. It's going to be the early career scientists, the undergraduates, that kind of stuff, where it might be their only paper or their only few papers, and now all of those are going to be flagged.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, because they're not set in their career path already.
That's right. That's going to be really tough on them, and they probably are not the ones that did anything wrong.
Right. They're just some guy or a girl who just was digging in the data, doing a lot of the the grunt work, so to speak.
Right.
that
Yeah,
there's given to
exactly.
them.
Yeah. Helping with writing and organizing and cleaning up the lab and maybe even making the recordings or what, like just doing all the work except except the data analysis, right? That's usually
Right.
how I run my lab. I do a lot of the data analyses with my graduate and undergraduate students because I have that expertise, but then they do like everything else, right? And with my guidance is like, yes, you design the experiment and I kind of help you to make sure that you're doing it in a way that is scientifically sound. That's probably what happens.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what turns out for this crew here, and see if it turns out to be fraud or just a mistake as they claim.
Yeah.
But either way,
we can keep you updated.
we'll follow along with it. Thanks, Doc.
Yeah. Thanks, Clay. I'm hoping for the best, but we'll just have to wait and see.
So that's it. You've listened to a bunch of fish nerds when you should have been fishing.
Special thanks to Boat Setter, Wally Pleasant, and Diana's Bath Salts. And big thank you to Mark for test driving the co-host seat tonight. I'm glad you were able to make it.
Hey, thanks for having me. Until next time, follow the code of the fish nerds. Spawn early and often.
Never trust a free lunch with strings attached.
And swim against the current every chance you get.
You did it. You made a podcast.
Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean, casting nets, fish nerds. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. It's a podcast.
Just for the halibut!
Fried in a basket or broiled in a pan. Eat it raw like you're in Siam. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. It's a podcast.
It's a podcast. Well done, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.
See you next time.
Hey, stay with me here, though.
All right.
Just stop the recording. Stop the recording.